Welcome to the first episode of 2026 of Charting Change in Legal. I'm Ari Kaplan. I'm an analyst that covers the legal industry and honored, as always, to be here with my co-host.
Caroline Hill. Hi, Ari. It's great to see you in 2026. I'm the editor. For those of you, our many listeners who don't know, I am the editor of Legal IT Insider based over in the UK, which is dark and wet. But hey, happy 2026.
Yes, and I'm here. I based in New York City, but I live in New Jersey, and here it is bright and incredibly snowy. So it looks like kind of like a wonderland outside, and kind of
So
nice.
beautiful.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
still a child about snow. I know as grown-ups we like pretty quickly realize, it's not all it's cut out to be, but I still see snow. We had a tiny bit of snow in the UK at the end of 25. So exciting. And then very quickly it goes icy and you're like, I hate snow.
Well, we used to joke. I remember the last couple of years we joke when it used to snow here because it hadn't snowed meaningfully in any way, but it certainly snowed and it's been pretty wintry over the last few weeks, and it looks nice. And I don't know, somehow puts you in a good mood. So, looking forward to
Oh,
the beginning of this year and having these conversations. It has been an interesting beginning to the year, I think, in legal.
it's been, I suppose, setting the tone for the year to come. So busy already, I think, for everybody. Lots of excitement. I think people needed that break over Christmas. A lot of people, I know in the US, people probably have less of a break than in the UK, but I think everyone needed to recharge the batteries. And then there's a sense of excitement about the year ahead. There's lots of, we've done, at the end of 25, I spoke to law firm leaders about what they've been doing in 25 and their predictions. And then I spoke with legal tech vendors. I didn't, a lot of the time didn't speak to them, to be completely frank with you, but kind of spoke with some, collated thoughts from others about 2026. And it's fascinating time. Like so there's a lot of people, a lot of continuing themes, right? Like, so is your data in order? If not, a lot of the stuff we're talking about in terms of Gen AI and agentic that we've talked about for the past however long will continue to be an issue. Agentic AI, that's a big thing. Obviously, that was a big word for last year. Is it going to be a big factor for this year? What does agentic mean? Is it really agentic? I think we're going to see a lot more of those kind of conversations. I don't think that's going anywhere. But I think people are being still really reflective. I think the time for predictions is starting to get over, to be frank with you, in January. But I feel like, and it's amazing how fast this month has already gone. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of recurring themes. To be frank with you, nothing sort of brand new. We're going to see a lot of the same conversations.
I also was lucky to host two different roundtables on Zoom in December. One for CEOs of legal tech companies. I do this quarterly-ish, but I started a CEO roundtable discussion series in the pandemic, and this was the 15th. So it was super interesting to just gather CEOs from around the world of legal tech and legal services companies. And I also, for the first time, did a roundtable of legal tech general counsel. So one of my friends became the general counsel of a legal tech company, and I said, "Oh, do you know the other general counsel of other legal tech companies? That seems like a very unique space because you're not just the general counsel, you're also in many ways an ambassador of the brand and differently because they're typically smaller companies and you're typically a user because you're a lawyer." And so I created this roundtable. It was really funny. And I have to say there were a lot of themes similar to what you talked about. There was some reflection on 25, some looking ahead to 26, but in terms of unique themes that surprised me, I hosted my first legal tech mafia breakfast of the year last week. And the one topic that came up, and there was lots of discussion about it that I had not anticipated, nor did I even raise it in my initial question, was vibe coding. There's this discussion now of vibe coding, and I'm certain that many people in the room were not even actually fully familiar with what that means in general. And I asked, is this similar to lawyers designing websites in the late 90s and developing apps, later and now kind of putting things together? And there was this real discussion about vibe coding leading to prototyping, which leading to faster development of concepts. And for me, that seemed like the most interesting, most curious opportunity for lawyers in the immediate term, in terms of something that is kind of new and yet
Yeah.
related to what we've been talking about.
I've had, so funnily enough, we're doing a podcast called The Inside View with law firm leaders. And the very next one I'm doing, recording, is on vibe coding. And I think it's going to be, you're absolutely spot on. I agree that it's going to be a big theme for this year. And anyone listening in, no doubt, I'm a lawyer by background, not a techie, but so everyone probably knows way more than me. But vibe coding using natural language to code. So it allows lawyers and people who really understand what needs to be done to sort of build effectively. And it's funny because I haven't really written much about it, but it was the law firm that approached me and went, "Hey, this is happening. This is something that we think is huge. It's a UK top, was their international firm, top 20, I'm going to say, definitely top 50." And they came to me and went, "We think this is huge." So I think it's interesting that you raise that. And I've written very little about it to date, actually. And actually, in my vendor roundup that I did on legaltechnology.com just last week, um, Sean Curran, who's the chief executive and founder of Gilo, which is big in the Gen AI space, particularly in the UK, he talked about vibe coding. He said, if you give me oh, sorry, I thought I'd be able to find it super fast. I can. He said a year ago, yeah, a year ago, in terms of what's changed, a year ago, some law firms told us their lawyers would never engage in chain prompting or prompt conditionality in our platform. 1 year on, lawyers in these firms are vibe coding competitor products to Gilo. In 2026, the industry needs to reset its bias and embrace open-mindedness about the future. A new era is upon us. So yeah, it's interesting. It's coming up all the time.
Although, like any other tool and like any other release and option, it kind of goes back to when generative AI first came onto the scene. There was concern about what data are you putting in and how are you leveraging client information and what are you using to prototype. So there was a really fun conversation, at least at the breakfast, about the pros and cons or the things that you should keep in mind and how exciting this is. And yet we need to temper the excitement with safety of data and information and privacy. And so I love the conversation. The other thing that I feel is really gaining prominence is pricing and value. It's not a conversation about the end of the billable hour. It isn't a philosophical moment. It's very much a practical moment of how do we actually price this? The clients want good work. Law firms want to provide good work. We're now using tools that help. How is that managed? And what's acceptable to both? And that is an interesting conversation that now brings in not just lawyers, obviously pricing professionals, CFOs taking a center stage, and fun because, the law is multidisciplinary. So now you have lots of voices with expertise trying to figure out how do we run our business in an optimal way that continues, frankly, the great success that law firms have had over the last few years, but also how do we manage the competitive landscape and provide the best work to our clients so that they appreciate us, they want to stick with us and feel like they're getting the best value, but also incredible service and great work that they expect. So those couple of things are themes that I feel will tend to drive the conversation as we're moving forward, at least in the first quarter.
Pricing comes up all the time as well, and some really intelligent commentary. Now's the time. That's not particularly intelligent. That's just me saying that. But but the billable hour does come up all the time still. But what's interesting, I thought this was super interesting addition to that topic. Thomson Reuters published a survey about the US legal market and the fact that profits are up 13%. They are doing so well. Investment in tech is also up by a significant percentage. But they were saying that it's because a lot of this is based on geopolitical instability. So firms are flying, and actually that doesn't help when it comes to being really strategic and really thinking about the future. So on some of the conversations that we have, people are really thoughtful about this, the kind of the underlying economic conditions are not necessarily helpful for two reasons. One, firms are making a ton of money. Two, it's not necessarily very stable. This report compared it to the just before the crash of 2008. No one likes the person who's like the, miserable, but I think it's really worth firms thinking about that, like are they being this period of geopolitical instability and profitability. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's changing very soon, to be frank. But it's an unstable way for them to be making money, and also the investment that they're making in technology was not necessarily, this report suggested. I thought it was kind of brave of Thomson Reuters, to be frank, because sometimes these reports don't really say what they mean to say. But anyway, it was saying it's not necessarily, they're not being as strategic, and like the house is on fire, but no, they may not really necessarily realize that their house is on fire. They are on fire, really. Like when you look at what's going to happen down the road. But right now, it's kind of cushioned by the huge amount of money that they're making with them because of a lot of what's going on in the world.
Many of the innovation leaders that you and I both are lucky to talk to and know tend to be the person who tries to show the balance. Like we could leverage this technology and it will drive us forward in a powerful way. Also, leveraging this technology allows us to kind of experiment with disrupting our own business model, which again will position us, should there be a situation where the things crumble and the market changes, which is almost an inevitability at this point because it's done so well for so long. And so you see that conversation also happening. There's a lot of very frank, honest discussion, it seems, with folks who are trying to drive change, but recognizing that there are challenges with driving it and also an urgency. And so
Mm,
finding this community of the willing and also having these conversations, you and I both participated in the skills discussion produced by
yeah.
Ozban Amram and an elite group of sort of an elite group of team members that help him do that, and really interesting conversations about just learning and development and
Yeah.
management and technology implementation. And so you're seeing more and more of that, and I'm excited that you have various people contributing to the direction and strategy for a lot of these organizations.
I think the skills point you make is interesting because one of the key themes that from t talking to law firm leaders at the end of last year, and that came up in the skills knowledge management forum, was working with partners. Obviously, they do it deliberately. So that for people who don't know about skills, there's different formats actually, but this forum online, they have presentations from law firms, or the end user and a business partner, typically the supplier of the technology. And they present together in terms of a project they've done. I think that's going to continue to be so important with working together, finding really close key business partners to help move the dial. Although one of the things that I think has come out really strongly, and I think maybe came out in the skills as well, but is this buy versus build? We're very much back into that level of questioning. And that doesn't mean that you can't be building with a business partner, of course, but it's like, do you work with a business partner to kind of adapt according to your strengths, or do you try and build something, bring resource in internally? I think that's coming up really strongly right now. How do it's that increased level of sophistication. So we've done what is Gen AI? We've done oh God, we got to use it. We're rolling it out. And now moving into how do we differentiate ourselves? And I think it's interesting as to how the business partners fit into that, helping law firms to really, law firms, a lot of them don't have the resource really, let's face it, or the capability in many cases. But so they can be really important in helping with this part of the journey, I think.
Well, the vibe coding discussion is a very interesting aspect of the buy versus build because now you can sort of build up to a point and figure it out. I have started in terms of developing content. So as you know, I produce a lot of content that sort of connects companies to their clients and tries to centralize a series of ideas that capture the mood of the moment in the profession. And so if I may host something or have some research and there are some themes I want to capture in an infographic, and I used to send them to my designer and say, these are the themes, put them in an infographic. And we'd be back and forth, be like, that's not exactly what I want. I'm not sure this is what I want. And then I started throwing it into one of the generative AI tools, and I'd say, look, this is the themes. This is the color palette. This is the scheme for the sponsor or what I'm looking for. And it would come up with stuff that wasn't great. And I'd iterate a little bit here and there, prompt it this way or that way. And then I'd have something and I'd send it to my designer and say, look, this is the content. This is kind of what I would love to see. Infographic here, a little design here in one
Boom.
go, we're done. And I think you may start to see that. You may, because one of the questions that I asked in a more provocative way than expecting a real answer was, are there too many legal tech companies? We see these maps. There are a lot of them. They seem to be thriving. There's lots of investment happening. And it's hard for a corporate legal department or a law firm to evaluate everything. They may not find the right thing that they're looking for because there are just so many and they didn't know to choose that one as an option. But maybe vibe coding something and then trying to figure out who has these kinds of things, they might be able to analyze the availability more effectively by building to a point and then looking to buy.
I th so the in-house on the in-house front, the corporate counsel. So I've spoken to a few in-house teams where they say that so much more work is going to be done in-house this year. And the work that currently would be done by private practice will be done in-house. I think this is a really fascinating time. How they deliver that is it varies obviously depending on the size and the capability and all of that. But that seems to be a recurring theme. That they're going to be absorbing. It's interesting because a lot of them, as you know, don't have the access to legal technology, right? They have to adapt. You deal with in-house all the time. They don't have a lot of the technology that they necessarily would love to have, and they always have to do more for less, and they always have to be very good at adapting. But nonetheless, my understanding is that that because they're just, I think they're fed up, fed up of law firms. This whole thing that we started, you actually brought up with the pricing. They don't think law firms are moving fast enough. So I think this could be another really interesting years to that dynamic too.
They also, in some ways, vibe code with Copilot. Many of
Yeah,
these legal departments have access to their enterprise level tools, and that enterprise level tool is often Copilot. And then they use it to a point and realize, oh, there are certain things we need that are legal specific. And then they may adopt a legal AI tool. They may adopt a more specific point solution for their law department. So it's an interesting moment. You're right, that point about in-house teams performing more of their work is something of a pendulum that tends to swing with the moment. And we
yeah,
may be going back to this point of more work happening in-house, and then they realize, gosh, we're overwhelmed, or this level of complexity is significant, or we need a certain protection of a law firm having to validate the results, and we moves back to having the outside counsel do it. And maybe we get to a point where law firms realize, gosh, they're able to do a lot of this work. And in fact, they're using the same tools, and you're starting to see the tools speak to each other. So a tool have all of the corporation's information that the law firm can access through the same tool they're using. And all of a sudden, it's sort of like one entity and this,
yeah,
a system of record. And all of a sudden, the firms may move more quickly because they realize, gosh, the actual structure of what we're doing has completely changed. And
yeah.
that may be a driver.
It's not going to be boring, Ari. I think we can conclude.
It's never been boring, but I feel like it's always shifting, and therefore we always have something to talk about. So it's
I know, I
it's
can't
it's
wait. Well,
uh,
our first chat of 26 is so fun.
super fun. I look forward to seeing you in person at some point this
In
year.
New York.
Yeah, there are lots of events coming up, and it's going to be really exciting. And I'm excited to continue this series.
I
Caroline Hill,
know.
it's a privilege. Thank
All
you
right,
very
Kaplan.
much,
Thank you
and thanks, of course, to our
to our
listener.
one listener.